Living in an affluent neighborhood in Los Angeles had its perks. Our house was a sprawling, modern structure with a view of the city lights, the kind of place I'd always dreamed of. My wife, Kayla, and I had been married for 15 years. We had two beautiful daughters, Emma, who was 11, and Aaliyah, who had just turned 8. Life seemed perfect on the surface, but lately, there had been an unsettling change in our household. Kayla, at 32, was still as stunning as the day I met her. She worked as a fashion consultant, which often required her to attend glamorous events and mingle with celebrities. I, Brian, managed a successful tech company, which allowed us to maintain our lavish lifestyle. Despite the demanding nature of our careers, we always found time for each other and our daughters. Or at least that was the case until recently. It all started a few months ago when Kayla began to act differently. She spent more time at the gym, revamped her wardrobe, and started wearing makeup even when she was just running errands. Initially, I thought she was simply taking better care of herself. But soon I noticed other changes. She was on her phone more often, texting late into the night, and she seemed distant, even when we were together. One evening, after putting the girls to bed, I sat on the patio, nursing a glass of whiskey. Kayla had come home late again, citing a work event that ran over time. She seemed agitated, distracted. I watched her through the sliding glass door as she flitted around the kitchen, avoiding my gaze. "Kayla, is everything okay?" I finally asked, unable to contain my concern any longer. She paused, looking up from her phone. "Yeah, just a bit stressed with work," she replied, her voice lacking the warmth it once held. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "You seem different lately. I just want to make sure you're all right." She forced a smile. "I'm fine, Brian, really." But I was not convinced. The next few weeks were filled with more late nights, more excuses. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I was flipping through a magazine in the living room when Emma and Elia came running in, giggling and excited. "Dad, guess what?" Emma exclaimed. "We saw Mommy on TV." My heart skipped a beat. "Really? When?" "Just now," Elia chimed in. She was in the background of some Hollywood event. I switched on the TV and quickly found the channel. It was a segment about a movie premiere featuring interviews with various celebrities. And there in the background was Kayla, laughing and talking to a young man who looked vaguely familiar. He was tall, handsome, and exuded the kind of charisma that only a movie star could. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "That's Chase Allen," Emma said, her eyes wide with admiration. "He's in all the big movies right now." Chase Allen. The name rang a bell. He was one of Hollywood's rising stars, known for his good looks and charm. What was Kayla doing with him? That night, as Kayla prepared for bed, I decided to confront her. "I saw you on TV today," I said casually. She froze for a moment before turning to face me. "Oh, it was just a work thing, you know how it is." "Sure, but why didn't you mention it?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. She sighed. "Brian, I didn't think it was a big deal. It was just a chance meeting." But I could see the tension in her eyes. Something was off, and I was determined to find out what. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. I noticed the way she would light up when she received a text, the way she would quickly hide her phone when I walked into the room. One evening, while she was in the shower, I took a deep breath and decided to check her phone. It was locked, but I knew her well enough to guess the password. Emma's date of birth. My hands were shaking as I entered the numbers, but the screen didn't unlock. I stared at the phone, frustration mounting. She must have changed her password. A surge of anxiety washed over me. What was she hiding? The next day I resolved to investigate further. I made a few discreet inquiries among our mutual friends, trying to glean any information about Kayla's recent activities. One of them mentioned seeing her at a charity gala with Chase Allen, noting that they seemed unusually close. Armed with this new lead, I decided to do some digging of my own. I drove to the location of the gala and discreetly asked around, pretending to be interested in attending future events. Eventually, I struck up a conversation with a waiter who had worked at the gala. "Yeah, I remember her," he said casually. "She was with that actor guy, Chase. They were together most of the night." My heart sank. It confirmed my worst fears. Kayla was involved with Chase Allen, and it was more than just a chance encounter. As the days passed, I continued to gather information, piecing together a timeline of their interactions. I followed Kayla's social media accounts discreetly, noting the places she visited and the events she attended. It became clear that her relationship with Chase was escalating, despite her efforts to keep it hidden. I struggled with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers and put an end to the lies. But another part of me hesitated, afraid of what I might discover and unsure of how to proceed without solid evidence. As days turned into weeks, my suspicion grew into a gnawing certainty. Kayla's interactions with Chase Allen were not innocent. They were too frequent, too secretive. She seemed to be slipping deeper into a world that didn't include me or our daughters. The distance between us grew, and I found myself spending more time away from home, lost in my thoughts and consumed by the need to uncover the truth. One evening, after yet another long day at work, I arrived home to find Kayla unusually flustered. She was pacing in the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. When she saw me, her expression shifted from anxiety to forced calm. "Hey, Brian," she greeted me, her voice tight. "You're home early." I nodded, studying her carefully. "Yeah, the meeting ended sooner than expected." She forced a smile. "That's good." I set my briefcase down and approached her slowly. "Kayla, can we talk?" Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she nodded. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've noticed things between us have been different lately." She looked away, her fingers tightening around her phone. "Brian, I've been under a lot of pressure at work. It's nothing to worry about." I shook my head. "It's more than that, Kayla. I've seen you with Chase." Her eyes widened in surprise, then quickly masked by defensiveness. "Chase? What do you mean?" I took a step closer, my heart pounding. "I saw you together at the gala, and other places too." She took a deep breath, her facade crumbling. "Brian, Before she could finish, her phone buzzed loudly in her hand. She glanced down, her face paling. I have to take this." Without another word, she hurried out of the room, leaving me standing there, stunned and hurt. My mind raced with a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. I knew I needed answers, but Kayla seemed determined to evade the truth. That night, as I lay in bed next to her, sleep eluded me. I couldn't shake the image of Kayla with Chase, their laughter and closeness haunting me. Was our marriage really falling apart? Were our years together meant to be undone by a fleeting affair with a Hollywood star? The next morning, I woke early and slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Kayla. I needed to clear my head, to think without the weight of her presence. I drove aimlessly, my thoughts swirling with questions and doubts. What did Chase have that I didn't? Why would Kayla risk everything for him? As the days passed, I found myself obsessing over every detail of Kayla's behavior. I started following her discreetly, watching from a distance as she went about her day. She seemed more guarded, more secretive than ever before. It was as if she knew I was onto her and was taking extra precautions. One afternoon, while Kayla was at a supposed work event, I decided to pay a visit to Chase's agent, hoping to gather more information. The office was located in a trendy part of town, surrounded by upscale shops and cafes. I walked in confidently, trying to appear casual despite the turmoil inside me. "Excuse me," I greeted the receptionist. "I'm looking for information about one of your clients, Chase Allen." The receptionist eyed me warily. "I'm sorry, but I can't provide any personal information about our clients." "I understand," I replied, keeping my tone polite. "But it's important. It concerns a personal matter." She hesitated, then picked up the phone and made a call. After a brief conversation, she motioned for me to take a seat and wait. Minutes later, a man in a sleek suit emerged from an office, his expression guarded. "Mr. Allen's affairs are confidential," he stated bluntly. "I'm not interested in his affairs," I said, trying to choose my words carefully. "I just need to know if he's been involved with someone recently." The man's eyebrows raised slightly. "I'm afraid I can't discuss that." "Look," I pressed on, feeling a surge of frustration. "This concerns my wife. She's been spending a lot of time with him." The man's demeanor softened slightly. I see. Well, mister? Brian, I replied. Brian Stevens. He nodded, contemplating my words. I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens. I can't confirm or deny any personal relationships involving Mr. Allen. But if you're concerned, perhaps you should talk to your wife. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course, I needed to confront Kayla to hear the truth from her directly. But I wasn't sure I was ready to face what I might hear. The encounter at Chase Allen's agent's office left me with more questions than answers. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. Kayla's affair with a Hollywood star seemed like something out of a movie itself, unbelievable, surreal, and utterly devastating. Over the next few days, I watched Kayla closely, but she became increasingly cautious. She was careful not to leave any trace of her interactions with Chase. Her phone was always on silent, and she kept it close at all times, making it impossible for me to check without raising suspicion. I felt like a detective in a movie, desperate for clues but constantly hitting dead ends. Kayla's routine seemed normal on the surface: work, errands, time with the kids. But there were moments of secrecy, brief phone calls taken in another room, and sudden changes in plans that left me questioning everything. One evening, as I pretended to be engrossed in a book, Kayla slipped out of the house without a word. My heart raced as I debated whether to follow her. Instinct won out, and I grabbed my keys, quietly slipping out after her. She drove cautiously, aware of her surroundings. I kept a safe distance, careful not to draw attention to myself. Eventually, she pulled into a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place we had never been together. I parked a block away and watched from afar as she entered the cafe. Inside, she met with a man I didn't recognize, their conversation hushed and intense. My stomach churned with a mix of jealousy and fear. Was this another rendezvous? Who was this man? I strained to hear their conversation, but the cafe buzzed with noise, making it impossible to catch more than a few muffled words. Frustration boiled inside me as minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I needed to know what was going on, but confronting her here would only drive her deeper into secrecy. Eventually, they parted ways, Kayla looking more relaxed as she returned to her car. I waited until she drove off before cautiously entering the cafe. The man was gone, leaving behind only faint traces of their conversation. I approached the waitress, hoping for any information. "Excuse me," I started cautiously. "Do you know who that woman was with?" The waitress glanced around nervously before leaning in closer. "Sorry, sir, I can't say." I sighed, feeling defeated. It seemed like everyone was keeping secrets. As I left the cafe, a glint of metal caught my eye, a flash drive hidden under a napkin on the table where Kayla and the man had sat. Curiosity piqued. I quickly pocketed the flash drive and hurried back to my car. Maybe this held the answers I had been searching for. Back home, I waited until Kayla was asleep before plugging the flash drive into my laptop. The drive contained folders filled with documents and photos, a meticulous record of Kayla's meetings, transactions, and conversations with Chase Allen. But there was more. Emails between Kayla and someone named Greg, discussing plans and secrets I had never been privy to. My heart sank as the pieces fell into place. Kayla wasn't just involved with Chase Allen, she was orchestrating something bigger. Something that involved deception and betrayal on a scale I had never imagined. The evidence was damning, leaving no room for doubt. But before I could make sense of it all, a notification flashed on my screen, an incoming email from an unknown sender. The subject line sent a chill down my spine. "Your wife's secret life." The evidence on the flash drive had shaken me to my core, and the email from the unknown sender only added to the turmoil. I clicked on it, my hands trembling. The message was brief and to the point. "Brian, I know about Kayla and Chase. She's been hiding more than you realize. Meet me at the Sunset Grill tomorrow at 3 p.m. He'll explain everything." The email was unsigned and the sender's address was untraceable. I debated whether to go, but my curiosity got the better of me. If someone had more information about Kayla's double life, I needed to hear it. The next day, I made an excuse to leave work early and headed to the Sunset Grill. I arrived a few minutes before 3 p.m., scanning the room for anyone who might be waiting for me. A woman caught my eye. She was sitting alone at a corner table wearing sunglasses and a hat that partially obscured her face. She waved me over as soon as she saw me. As I approached, she removed her sunglasses, revealing a face that seemed vaguely familiar. It took a moment for recognition to hit me. She was Michelle Turner, a well-known Hollywood actress. What was she doing here? "Brian?" she asked, her voice low and cautious. "Yes," I replied, still in shock. "Why are you here? How do you know about Kayla?" Michelle gestured for me to sit down. "It is a long story, but I will get to the point. Chase Allen and I used to be an item. When I found out about his affair with Kayla, I started digging. I discovered that Kayla is not just having an affair. She is part of something bigger, something dangerous. I thought you deserved to know." My mind reeled as I tried to process what she was saying. "What do you mean, something dangerous?" Michelle leaned in closer. "Chase and Kayla are involved in a scheme to launder money through fake film productions. Kayla uses her connections to help Chase move large sums of money without attracting attention. They have been careful, but I've managed to gather some evidence." She slid a folder across the table. "This is everything I have. Bank statements, emails, photos, enough to blow their operation wide open. But I cannot do it alone. I need your help." I stared at the folder, my emotions a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and a strange sense of opportunity. As crazy as it sounded, the idea of getting involved with Michelle Turner, of having my own fling, flashed through my mind. If Kayla could betray me with a Hollywood star, why could I not do the same? I nodded slowly. "All right, I am in. What do we do next?" Michelle smiled, a hint of relief in her eyes. "We need to be careful. Kayla and Chase are smart, and they will do whatever it takes to protect their secret. But if we work together, we can bring them down." Over the next few days, Michelle and I met in secret, piecing together the evidence and planning our next move. Our interactions were professional at first, but as we spent more time together, the chemistry between us became undeniable. One evening, after a particularly intense planning session, we found ourselves alone in her hotel room, the air charged with tension. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed her. To my surprise, she kissed me back, and in that moment, all the pain and betrayal I had felt melted away. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of happiness. As our affair began, it became a source of strength for me. Kayla's betrayal still stung, but knowing that I had found someone who cared about me, who was willing to help me fight back, made it easier to bear. We continued to gather evidence, determined to expose Kayla and Chase's scheme. One day, while Kayla was at work, I decided to confront Chase directly. I drove to his mansion, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. When he opened the door, his smug smile faded as soon as he saw me. "We need to talk," I said, pushing past him into the house. Chase tried to play it cool. "Brian, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" I turned to face him, my voice steady but full of resolve. "I know about you and Kayla. I know about the money laundering. I have all the evidence I need to bring you both down." For a moment, Chase looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression hardened. "You think you can take me down? You are just a small-town guy. You have no idea who you are dealing with." I took a step closer, my anger boiling over. "Do not underestimate me. I have nothing left to lose, and I have help." Chase's eyes narrowed. "Help? From who?" Before I could answer, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught our attention. Michelle walked in, holding her phone up to record the confrontation. "From me," she said, her voice cold and determined. "It is over, Chase. You are going to pay for what you have done." Chase's face twisted in fury as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You think you can just waltz in here and ruin everything I've worked for?" he spat. "You're making a big mistake." Michelle stood her ground, the phone recording every word. "The only mistake was thinking you could get away with it. We're done playing games, Chase." I took a deep breath, the weight of the confrontation bearing down on me. "You destroyed my family," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You used my wife and you thought you could just walk away unscathed. Well, not anymore." Chase's eyes flickered with fear for a moment, but he quickly masked it with bravado. "You don't know what you're getting into," he said, backing away. "I have connections, powerful connections. They'll come after you if you go through with this." Michelle stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. Let them come. We have enough evidence to bring down this entire operation. Your connections won't save you. Chase lunged forward, trying to grab the phone from Michelle's hand. Instinctively, I jumped between them, shoving him back with all my strength. He stumbled, losing his balance and falling to the floor. "Get out," I commanded, my voice a low growl. "Get out of my house. If you come near my family again, I won't hesitate to protect them." Chase glared up at me, a mix of hatred and fear in his eyes. Slowly he got to his feet, straightening his clothes. "This isn't over," he said, his voice menacing. "You have no idea what you've started." He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Michelle and I stood there in silence for a moment, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice softening. I nodded, though my hands were still trembling. "Yeah, I can't believe this is all happening. It feels like a nightmare." Michelle placed a reassuring hand on my arm. "We're going to get through this, Brian. We'll take him down, and you'll get your life back." As we stood there, I felt a surge of gratitude towards Michelle. She had stepped into my life at a time when I needed someone the most, and together, we were facing the impossible. But there was still a long road ahead, and I knew things were about to get even more complicated. The next few days were a blur of planning and strategizing. Michelle and I worked tirelessly, poring over the evidence and preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Kayla. We knew we had to be careful. Chase's threats were not to be taken lightly, and we needed to ensure our safety. One evening, as Michelle and I were reviewing our plan, the doorbell rang. I exchanged a wary glance with Michelle before heading to the door. When I opened it, I was met with a sight that made my heart stop. Kayla, standing on the porch, tears streaming down her face. "Brian, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I stepped aside, letting her in. She glanced at Michelle, then back at me, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "I know what you found," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you know about Chase." I nodded, my heart heavy. "Why, Kayla? Why did you do it?" She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I was stupid," she sobbed. "I thought I could have it all, the excitement, the thrill. Chase promised me the world and I fell for it. But I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you or the girls." Michelle stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "It's too late for regrets, Kayla. We have evidence of your involvement in the money laundering. You need to tell us everything you know. If we can prove you were coerced, it might help your case." Kayla looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand. Chase won't let me go that easily. He has people watching me. If he finds out I'm talking to you, hell come after me, after all of us." I knelt beside her, my anger tempered by a flicker of compassion. "Kayla, we can protect you, but we need your help. You have to trust us." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll tell you everything." As Kayla began to recount the details of her involvement with Chase, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, but also a strange sense of relief. We were finally getting the answers we needed, and with Kayla's cooperation, we had a chance to bring Chase down for good. The next few days were intense. Kayla provided crucial information that helped us piece together the full extent of Chase's operation. We worked around the clock, coordinating with Michelle's legal team and gathering enough evidence to ensure a solid case. One evening, as we were wrapping up our plans, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Jim, the private investigator I had initially turned to for help. He looked grim as he handed me an envelope. "I did some digging on Chase," he said. "I found something you need to see." I opened the envelope, my heart pounding. Inside were photos of Chase meeting with known criminals, exchanging briefcases full of cash. There were also documents detailing his connections to a powerful crime syndicate. "This changes everything," Michelle said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to move fast. If Chase gets wind of this, he'll disappear." We spent the night finalizing our plan. The next morning we coordinated with the authorities, arranging for a raid on Chase's mansion. It was a risky move, but with the new evidence we had a strong case. As the sun rose, we gathered our team and prepared for the operation. Kayla, now fully cooperating, stayed with the girls at a safe location. Michelle and I, along with Jim and the authorities, headed to Chase's mansion. The raid was swift and decisive. Chase was caught off guard, his smug demeanor replaced with panic as he was taken into custody. The authorities seized incriminating evidence, and the media quickly caught wind of the high-profile arrest. As Chase was led away in handcuffs, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The nightmare was finally coming to an end. But amidst the chaos, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss for what had been destroyed in the process. Michelle stood beside me, her hand in mine. "We did it," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's over." I nodded, though I knew there were still challenges ahead. Kayla and I had a long road to rebuilding our lives, and the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. But with the truth finally out in the open, we could begin to move forward. In the days following Chase's arrest, life was a whirlwind of emotions and legal proceedings. Kayla was cooperating fully with the authorities, providing all the information she had about Chase's criminal activities. It was clear that while she had made grave mistakes, she was also a victim of Chase's manipulations. The authorities took this into account, and she was placed under protective custody until the trial. Michelle was my rock through it all. We had grown closer during the investigation, and our connection had deepened into something more than just a partnership against a common enemy. It was a strange feeling, falling for someone while dealing with the fallout of my wife's betrayal. But Michelle's presence brought a sense of stability and hope that I desperately needed. One evening, after a long day of meetings with lawyers and police, Michelle and I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The girls were inside, playing a board game, their laughter a soothing backdrop to the chaos of our lives. "How are you holding up?" Michelle asked, her hand gently squeezing mine. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "It's been a roller coaster. Some days I feel like I'm finally getting a grip, and then something happens that reminds me of how far we still have to go. But having you here, it makes it easier." Michelle smiled, a warm, comforting expression. "We'll get through this together, Brian. And once this is all over, you and the girls can start fresh. You deserve that." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Just as I was starting to relax, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at it, expecting another update from the lawyers. But the name on the screen made my blood run cold. It was an unknown number, but the message was clear. "You think it's over? It's just beginning. Watch your back." I showed the message to Michelle, her face instantly becoming serious. "We need to show this to the authorities," she said. "Chase must have friends on the outside who are trying to intimidate you." We immediately contacted Jim and the police, forwarding them the message. They assured us they would investigate and increase the security around us, but the threat hung heavy in the air. It was a stark reminder that while Chase was in custody, his influence still reached far and wide. The following days were tense. Extra security was placed around the house, and I made sure the girls were always within sight. Kayla, though under protection, was kept informed of the threats, and it was clear that the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on her. One night after the girls had gone to bed, Michelle and I were in the living room going over the latest developments. Suddenly there was a loud crash from the backyard. My heart raced as I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and motioned for Michelle to stay behind me. We moved cautiously toward the back door, peering into the darkness. The security lights had been smashed, and in the dim glow of the moon I could make out a figure lurking near the fence. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my gut. The figure didn't respond, but instead bolted towards the back gate. I gave chase, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Michelle called the police as I ran, my mind racing with thoughts of who it could be. Was it someone sent by Chase or just a random intruder? I reached the gate just in time to see the figure disappear into the shadows of the neighboring yards. Frustration surged through me as I realized I couldn't catch them. I stood there panting, the bat still gripped tightly in my hands. When I returned to the house, the police had arrived, securing the area and taking our statements. The officers assured us they would do everything they could to find the intruder. But the incident left a lingering sense of vulnerability. That night, as I lay in bed with Michelle by my side, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were far from safe. Chase's network was vast, and his reach extended beyond prison walls. I had to be vigilant, not just for my sake, but for my family's. The next morning, I woke to find a note slipped under the front door. My heart pounded as I unfolded it, revealing a chilling message. "This isn't over, Brian. You took something from me, and now I'm going to take everything from you." I showed the note to Michelle and the police. It was clear we were being targeted, and the authorities doubled down on their efforts to protect us. But as the days went by, the tension only grew. We couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of waiting for the next move. One evening, as Michelle and I were discussing our options, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, my pulse quickening. "Hello?" "Brian," a familiar voice said, sending a chill down my spine. It was Chase. "You think putting me in jail would end this? You have no idea what I'm capable of. This is just the beginning." I hung up, my hands trembling. I immediately called Jim, who contacted the prison to report the call. They assured us Chase was being closely monitored, but the call had clearly come from him. It was a stark reminder that even behind bars, Chase was a threat. The following days were a blur of heightened security measures and constant vigilance. I worked closely with the police and Jim to track down any leads on who might be helping Chase on the outside. But as the tension mounted, so did the strain on my relationship with Michelle. One night as we sat on the porch, Michelle turned to me, her expression serious. "Brian, we need to talk. This situation is taking a toll on all of us. We can't keep living like this." I nodded, knowing she was right. "I know, but what can we do? Chase won't stop until he's destroyed everything." Michelle took my hand, her eyes filled with determination. "Then we need to find a way to end this once and for all. We can't just react to his threats, we need to take the fight to him." Her words struck a chord. I realized that we had been playing defense, waiting for Chase to make his move. It was time to go on the offensive, to gather our own evidence and find a way to bring down his entire operation. We spent the next few weeks gathering information, working with Jim and the authorities to piece together Chase's network. It was a dangerous game, but we were determined to see it through. One evening, as we were going over our findings, we received a breakthrough. Jim had uncovered a key piece of evidence linking Chase to a powerful crime syndicate. It was the smoking gun we needed to dismantle his entire operation. Armed with this new information, we coordinated with the authorities to launch a series of raids on Chase's associates. The plan was risky, but it was our best chance to cut off his influence and protect our family. The night of the raids, I could barely contain my nerves. We gathered at the police station, waiting for the signal that the operation was a success. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the call came in. The raids had been successful and several of Chase's key associates were in custody. It was a major blow to his operation, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. But as we celebrated the victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that the fight was far from over. Chase was still out there, and I knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. The victory we felt from the raids was short-lived. The next morning, a chilling reminder of Chase's reach greeted me in the form of another note, this time left on the windshield of my car. It read, "You think you've won? This is just the beginning." My heart pounded as I clutched the note, the ominous message sending a shiver down my spine. Michelle and I immediately contacted Jim and the police, who increased our security detail. But the note was a stark reminder that we were still in danger, and Chase was far from defeated. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside had me on edge. Michelle sensed my tension and reached out, her hand finding mine in the dark. "We're going to get through this, Brian," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear I knew she felt. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her strength. "I know, but we have to stay vigilant. Chase won't stop until he's gotten his revenge." The following days were a blur of heightened security measures and constant vigilance. We continued working with Jim and the police to track down any remaining leads on Chase's associates. But as the tension mounted, so did the strain on our lives. One evening, as I was tucking Emma and Elia into bed, Elia looked up at me with wide, fearful eyes. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" I forced a smile, trying to reassure her. "Of course, sweetheart. We're safe, and Mommy and I are doing everything we can to protect you." But as I kissed her goodnight, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on my shoulders. I couldn't let my girls live in fear. I had to find a way to end this once and for all. The next morning, Jim called with a lead that sent a chill down my spine. He had discovered that Chase had a hidden safe house on the outskirts of town, a place where he conducted his most secretive and dangerous activities. If we could find it, we might be able to gather the evidence needed to put him away for good. Michelle and I met with Jim and the police to formulate a plan. It was risky, but it was our best chance to take Chase down. We decided to conduct a covert operation to locate and raid the safe house. The night of the operation, my nerves were on edge. We gathered at the police station, donning bulletproof vests and preparing for the raid. The tension in the air was palpable as we reviewed the plan one last time. "Remember, we need to be quick and efficient," Jim said, his voice steady. "We can't afford any mistakes." I nodded, determination burning in my chest. This was our chance to end it all. We moved out under the cover of darkness, the convoy of unmarked police cars winding through the deserted streets. When we reached the outskirts of town, we parked a distance away from the safe house and approached on foot, using the cover of trees and shrubs to stay hidden. As we neared the property, the tension reached a fever pitch. The safe house was a dilapidated building, barely visible through the overgrown vegetation. We split into teams, surrounding the house to cover all exits. Jim gave the signal, and the teams moved in. The police officers breached the door, rushing inside with weapons drawn. I followed closely behind, my heart pounding in my ears. Inside the safe house was a maze of rooms filled with illegal contraband and documents. The police quickly subdued the few guards present, and we began searching for any evidence that could tie Chase to his criminal activities. In one of the back rooms, I stumbled upon a locked cabinet. My hand shook as I forced it open, revealing a trove of documents and a laptop. As I scanned through the papers, my eyes widened at the incriminating evidence. There were detailed records of Chase's illegal dealings, names of his associates, and even plans for future operations. "We've got him," I breathed, my voice barely a whisper. "We've finally got him." Jim and the police gathered the evidence, securing it for transport. As we exited the safe house, I felt a surge of triumph. We had the proof we needed to put Chase away for good. But as we returned to the police station, the sense of victory was overshadowed by a nagging feeling of unease. Chase had always been one step ahead, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he had something else planned. The following morning, the news broke that Chase had been found dead in his cell. The official report claimed it was a suicide, but the timing was too convenient. It felt like the final, twisted move in Chase's game. As I processed the news, a sense of dread settled over me. Chase might be gone, but his influence and the danger he posed were far from over. The documents we had found hinted at a much larger network, one that could still come after us. Michelle and I decided to take the girls and leave town for a while, to find some semblance of peace and safety. As we packed our bags, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in our lives.